The stars burned like silver dust across the endless black. Lieutenant Marcus Hale sat inside the cockpit of his small human patrol ship, his eyes fixed on the data screen. He had been traveling on a routine route near the border of human space, checking for signs of pirate activity. It was supposed to be a quiet patrol, nothing more. But fate had other plans. A sudden alarm filled the cockpit. Red lights flashed. The radar screamed out a warning as unknown ships appeared, sliding from the shadow of a nearby asteroid field. Marcus cursed under his breath and pulled hard on the control stick. Energy bolts lanced past his ship, bright streaks of green and gold. Whoever they were firing without warning. Hostile contact, Marcus muttered. His heart pounded, but his mind stayed sharp. He pushed the thrusters to full power, darting between rocks and broken stone. The attackers were fast, their ships sharp and angled, built for ambush. His own craft was tougher but not made for outnumbered fights. He tried to send a distress call, but static filled the channel. The ambush had been planned well. A plasma shot struck his left wing, shaking the whole ship. Smoke filled the cockpit. Systems were failing one after another. Marcus gritted his teeth and forced the ship lower, heading toward the atmosphere of a nearby world. It was the only chance to survive. The planet below was a swirl of green and gold, forests shining like oceans of light. Clouds parted as Marcus's burning ship cut through the sky, leaving a trail of fire. The controls screamed, the hull groaned, and then the world spun. The last thing Marcus saw before impact was the ground racing up to meet him. The crash shook the quiet forest. Birds scattered into the sky. A crater smoked where the human ship had slammed into the earth, its metal twisted and broken. For a moment, nothing moved. Then a hatch groaned and opened. Marcus stumbled out, coughing, his uniform torn, his face bruised. He was alive, but barely. He grabbed his survival pack and blaster pistol before the flames consumed the wreck. His head ached, but his soldier's training took over. Find water. Find shelter. Avoid enemies. He scanned the horizon, where towering trees rose like pillars, their leaves shimmering faintly under the sun. The air was rich, almost too rich, filled with strange scents. Marcus walked forward. But he did not get far before he heard something scream. A clear, sharp cry of fear. It came from deeper in the forest, and it was not human. He hesitated for only a moment. The sound came again. Without thinking, Marcus ran toward it. He found a clearing surrounded by broken stone arches, ruins of some ancient structure. At its center, a young alien woman stood, her back pressed against one of the pillars. She was tall and slender, her skin a soft silver blue, her eyes glowing faintly like twin stars. Her clothing was fine and regal, a long robe of green silk with golden patterns. Clearly, she was not a common traveler, but she was not alone. A group of raiders circled her, their armor rough, their weapons crude but deadly. They were not of her kind. Their skin was gray and cracked, their bodies heavy and brutish. Their leader raised a jagged blade, grinning with cruel delight. "Stay back!" the alien princess cried, her voice trembling. She held a small staff, but her hands shook. She was no warrior. Marcus took in the scene in a single breath. He did not know who she was, what people she came from, or why the raiders hunted her. But he saw danger. He saw someone about to die. And his body moved before his mind could question it. He burst from the trees, raising his blaster. The first shot cracked through the air, striking one raider in the chest. The other spun in surprise. Marcus shouted, "Get down!" The princess froze, wide-eyed, but dropped low as another raider swung his weapon. Marcus fired again, moving fast, but there were too many. They rushed him, snarling, blades flashing. He ducked, rolled, and fired, dropping another. But one raider's strike caught him across the arm, burning pain through his muscles. The leader snarled and lunged for the princess. She gasped, stumbling back. Without thinking, Marcus moved. He threw himself between her and the blade. Steel bit into his shoulder. He cried out, but he did not fall. He pushed forward, shielding her with his own body. taking the strike meant for her. The princess's eyes went wide. No. Marcus gritted his teeth, shoved the raider back, and fired point blank. The leader collapsed, his weapon falling from his hand. The others, shocked by the sudden ferocity, hesitated. Marcus used that moment to fire again, driving them back. At last, the survivors fled into the trees, snarling curses. Silence fell. Marcus staggered, his chest heaving. Blood ran from his wound, staining his uniform. The princess reached out, her hands trembling as she touched his arm. You saved me," she whispered. Her voice was filled with disbelief and something else, something softer. Marcus gave a weak smile. Couldn't just stand by? His knees buckled, and he nearly collapsed, but the princess caught him, surprising him with her strength. "Stay awake," she cried. "You must not die here," he tried to answer, but darkness closed around his vision. His last thought before he fainted was simple. I did what I had to do. When Marcus woke again, he was not in the forest. He lay on a bed softer than any he had known, the air filled with the scent of herbs. Golden light streamed through tall windows and voices whispered nearby. He tried to sit up, but pain seared through his body. "Rest," a gentle voice said. Marcus turned his head. The princess sat beside him, her silver blue skin glowing softly in the light. She smiled faintly, though. Worry shadowed her eyes. "You live," she said. "The healers worked through the night. My mother will wish to see you soon." Marcus blinked. "Your mother." The princess bowed her head slightly. "I am Arinya, daughter of Queen Serenia of the Valari Empire. You risked your life for me, stranger. For that, you are no longer just a traveler. You are bound to our fate now." Marcus stared at her in silence. He had only acted on instinct, the same instinct that had carried him through 100 battles. But here, in this alien palace, with an alien princess speaking such words, he realized his life had changed forever. The palace of the Valari was a wonder. Marcus soon learned that it was not only a home, but the beating heart of an empire. Towering spires touched the sky, carved of living crystal that shimmered with inner light. Gardens floated on terraces, filled with flowers that glowed softly at night. Everywhere he walked, alien eyes followed him, some curious, some suspicious, some openly hostile. The guards did not trust him. The nobles whispered about him, but none could ignore one fact. This outsider had shielded the princess with his own body, and soon he would stand before the queen herself. Marcus Hale woke to the sound of distant bells. Their tone was soft and musical, nothing like the harsh alarms of a human ship. He opened his eyes slowly. The ceiling above him was made of crystal that glowed faintly as if the walls themselves carried light. He shifted, wincing at the pain that still burned through his shoulder. "You should not move too much," a calm voice said. Marcus turned his head. The princess sat near his bed again. Arinya, daughter of the queen. Her long silver blue hair shimmered under the light, and her eyes studied him with quiet concern. She looked less frightened than she had in the forest. Now she carried herself with the calm grace of royalty, though her youth was still clear in her face. "How long was I out?" Marcus asked, his voice rough. 2 days, Arinya said. "The healers worked hard. Your wounds were deep, but you were stronger than I expected. Most of my people would not have survived such cuts." Marcus gave a faint smile. "Humans are stubborn. Sometimes that keeps us alive." Arinya tilted her head. "Perhaps that is why you ran into danger for me. No Valari warrior would have chosen to block a blade with his own body. It is not our way." Marcus shrugged, though it hurt. "Didn't have much choice. You were about to be killed. I couldn't just watch." The princess looked away for a moment, her hands clasping tightly in her lap. "You do not know me. You did not owe me anything, and yet you shielded me. I cannot forget that." Before Marcus could answer, the door opened. A guard entered, tall and stern, his armor shining. "The queen commands the presence of the outsider," the guard said, his voice firm but not hostile. "He must be brought to the throne room at once." Inya rose quickly. "He is still weak." The queen waits for no one, the guard said. His sharp gaze turned to Marcus. Get ready, human. Marcus sat up slowly, ignoring the throbbing in his body. He had faced worse pain before, and now it seemed he was about to meet the ruler of this empire. He adjusted the simple robe they had given him in place of his burned uniform, then stood. His legs felt unsteady, but he forced himself upright. Whatever happened, he would face it with dignity. The palace halls were wide and filled with light. The walls were carved with flowing designs that seemed to move like water when the sunlight touched them. Alien servants bowed as the guards led Marcus through, yet others only stared, whispering behind their hands. The outsider who had saved the princess, some looked at him with awe, others with distrust. At last, they reached the great doors of the throne room. They opened with a deep sound, and Marcus stepped inside. The chamber was vast. Crystal pillars rose high, supporting a ceiling painted with scenes of stars and battles long past. At the center stood the throne carved from a single block of glowing stone, and upon it sat Queen Serenia. She was taller than her daughter, her presence commanding even without words. Her silver-blue skin glimmered like moonlight, and her golden crown shone with sharp points like the rays of the sun. Her eyes, deep and piercing, fixed on Marcus the moment he entered. Around her, nobles and advisors stood in silence. Waiting, Marcus bowed stiffly, unsure of the exact custom but hoping respect crossed all cultures. Your Majesty? The queen's voice was smooth, yet firm. You are the human who shielded my daughter with your own flesh. Marcus nodded. Yes, I am Marcus Hale, lieutenant of the human fleet. You are far from your fleet, the queen said, her gaze unblinking. And yet fate placed you in the path of my child at her moment of peril. Twice she should have died, first to raiders, then to their blade. But you stood in the way. Marcus swallowed. I only did what any soldier should do. A murmur rippled through the court. Some nobles shook their heads, whispering in their own tongue. The queen raised one hand, and silence returned. She asked simply. Her eyes narrowed. Why would a stranger, a man of a distant race, risk his life for mine? The question struck Marcus harder than he expected. He thought of his crash, the smoke, the sound of the princess screaming. He thought of how his body had moved before he even thought. He let out a slow breath, because it was right. She was defenseless. I couldn't let her die. The queen studied him for a long time. Her expression did not change, but the weight of her gaze pressed on him like iron. Finally, she nodded once. Your actions cannot be ignored, Serenia said. You will remain under my protection until your ship is repaired or until I decide otherwise. For now, you are a guest of the throne. Marcus bowed again, though unease twisted in his stomach. Until she decides otherwise. Those words carried weight. Days passed in the palace. Marcus healed slowly, though the alien medicine worked faster than anything he knew. He was allowed to walk the gardens, always watched by guards. The nobles kept their distance, though some approached with questions, curious about humans. Most, however, remained suspicious. To them, Marcus was still an intruder who had stepped into royal affairs. Only Arinya stayed close. She often visited him, speaking of her people, their customs, and their history. Marcus listened carefully, asking questions, comparing with his own human experiences. Their conversations grew easier, more natural. He could see her curiosity brighten whenever he spoke of Earth, of oceans and mountains, of the way humans dreamed of the stars. One afternoon, they sat beside a fountain that sang with soft music as water flowed through hidden pipes. Arinya watched him quietly for a while before speaking. The nobles whisper, she said. They wonder why my mother allows you to remain here. Some fear you will influence me. Others fear you bring human ambition into our court. Marcus smirked faintly. I'm just trying to stay alive. Ambition isn't on my list right now. Arinya laughed softly, a sound like wind through chimes. Still, you confuse them. You confuse me as well. You act without thought for yourself. My people, we value balance. We avoid needless sacrifice. Yet you threw yourself before the blade as if your life mattered less than mine. Marcus looked at her, his face calm but serious. Your life did matter more than mine. You're a princess. I'm just a soldier, stranded far from home. If saving you meant losing me, it was worth it. Her smile faded, and her eyes grew distant. You think little of your own worth, Marcus Hale. Perhaps you do not yet see what your actions mean. Before Marcus could answer, a guard approached quickly. He bowed to the princess. Forgive the interruption, Your Highness, but news has reached us. Raiders were seen near the southern border again. They searched for someone. Arinia's eyes darkened. For me. The guard nodded. It is likely. They failed before, and now they try again. Marcus stood, his instincts sharp. Then this wasn't random. Someone sent them. The guard glanced at him with unease, but said nothing. Arinia rose, her face calm but troubled. We must tell my mother. This is no simple raid. It is a plot. That evening, Marcus stood once more in the throne room as Arinia spoke before the queen. The hall was filled with nobles, all listening. She explained the news, her voice steady but edged with fear. When she finished, silence filled the chamber. The queen's expression was unreadable. It is, as I suspected. Someone seeks to weaken my throne by striking at my daughter. Her gaze swept the hall, sharp as a blade. But who would dare? The nobles shifted uneasily, some whispering, others frowning. Marcus stepped forward slightly. If I may, Your Majesty. This attack was planned. I've seen tactics like it before. Pirates don't take such risks unless they're paid well. Someone in power wants the princess gone. Gasps rose from the crowd. A few nobles glared at him, their eyes filled with suspicion. One of them, a tall man with a jeweled robe, stepped forward. How dare the outsider speak in this hall? He is no Valari. His words carry no weight. Marcus held his ground. I don't know your customs, but I know war. And what I saw in that forest wasn't random. Someone tried to kill her. The queen raised her hand again. The hall fell silent. Her eyes locked on Marcus, and for a moment there was a strange glimmer in them. Respect? Curiosity? It was hard to tell. Perhaps Aranya said slowly, This human sees what we overlook. His eyes are not clouded by our politics. For now, we will listen. The noble bowed, though his glare at Marcus did not fade. That night, Marcus sat alone in his chamber. The palace was quiet, but his mind was not. He thought of the attack of the raiders, of the cold suspicion in the noble's eyes. He thought of the queen's gaze, sharp and calculating. And he thought of Arinia, her voice trembling when she said, They are coming for me. Marcus leaned back, staring at the glowing ceiling. He had only wanted to survive after his crash. But now, he was tangled in the fate of an empire. And deep inside, he knew one thing for certain. The danger was far from over. The days in the palace moved like a slow river, calm on the surface, but filled with hidden currents beneath. Marcus Hale knew this feeling well. He had seen it in human military councils tooth a quiet before a storm. But here, among the Valar, he was an outsider walking a thin line between respect and distrust. Some nobles watched him with open hostility. Others whispered when he passed. The guards still kept a careful eye on him. Yet through it all, Marcus noticed one thing. Princess Arinia stayed close. She spoke to him when no one else would. She listened to his stories about human worlds. She told him about the Valari Empire's long traditions. It was in these quiet talks that Marcus began to understand. The Valari were proud, almost too proud. They valued harmony, balance, and beauty in all things. But they were unused to sacrifice. To throw oneself in front of a blade, as Marcus had done, was alien to them. Some saw it as foolish. Others saw it as extraordinary. Arnia seemed to fall into the second group. You act so quickly, she told him one evening as they walked through the hanging gardens. The stars glowed above, reflected in the crystal pools around them. When danger comes, you do not think, you move. That is not our way. Marcus gave a small smile. If I stopped to think, you'd be dead by now. Sometimes action matters more than caution. She studied him, her glowing eyes narrowing slightly. And yet you live, even after such wounds. Maybe humans carry something our people do not. A stubbornness to hold on, even when reason says it is over. Marcus chuckled softly. Yeah, we're stubborn. That's one of our best and worst traits. Arinya fell silent, her gaze drifting toward the horizon. Perhaps that is why my mother has not sent you away. Perhaps she wonders if that same stubbornness can protect this throne. Marcus didn't answer. But inside, he wondered the same whispers in the hall one morning. Marcus was summoned not by the queen but by one of her advisors. The man was tall, thin, and sharp-eyed, wearing long robes of blue silk. He introduced himself as Lord Cirrus. You are human, Cirrus said, his voice smooth. Your mind is not clouded by our customs. Perhaps you will see what others do not. Marcus frowned. What exactly are you asking? Cirrus leaned closer. The attack on the princess was not the work of simple raiders. Someone powerful paid them. We have searched for answers, but the trail fades. Yet I hear you have a soldier's mind. You see patterns? You read movements? Maybe you can find what others cannot.
Marcus
Studied the man. Was this genuine trust or another test? He could not tell. But he nodded slowly. I'll try. Show me what you have. They walked through a small chamber filled with scrolls and glowing crystal tablets. Cirrus explained the details. The raiders had appeared at the exact place and time Arinya traveled. They struck with precision. Too much precision for chance. Someone had given them information. Marcus looked at the maps, at the routes marked in gold. His soldier's mind began to work. He noticed things the Valari had missed. The ambush point was chosen not only for isolation, but for the lack of nearby patrols. Whoever planned it knew the gaps in the Queen's Guard. This wasn't random, Marcus said finally. They had help from inside. Someone in this palace gave them the path. Cirrus stiffened. You dare accuse? I don't know who, Marcus interrupted. But I know it wasn't guesswork. You've got a traitor here. Cirrus's face darkened, but he did not argue. Instead, he bowed slightly. Perhaps your eyes are sharper than ours. I will take this to the Queen. But Marcus noticed the unease in his expression. And he wondered if Cirrus truly meant to tell the Queen or hide the truth for himself. The ceremony a week later. The palace prepared for a great ceremony. It was to honor the ancestors, a tradition where the royal family stood before the people, offering gifts of light to the skies. For the Valari, it was more than ritual. It was a symbol of unity and power. The Queen herself would lead it. Arinya would stand at her side. And Marcus, though still watched with suspicion, was ordered to attend. He did not like it. His instincts told him that danger would come again. But orders were orders. The ceremony took place in a vast plaza before the palace gates. Thousands of Valari citizens gathered, their robes flowing like rivers of color. Crystal lanterns floated in the air, glowing softly as music filled the space. The Queen appeared. Regal and commanding, her presence enough to silence the crowd. Arinya stood beside her, dressed in robes of pale silver, her eyes shining nervously. Marcus stood not far behind, surrounded by guards who kept their distance. He scanned the rooftops, the shadows, the crowd. Years of training guided his eyes. And then he saw a flicker of movement, too quick, too deliberate. A shadow slipped across a roof, carrying something long and sharp. Marcus's body moved before thought. He shouted, "Down!" Arinya turned in shock as a bolt of energy cut through the air toward her. Without hesitation, Marcus lunged forward. He slammed into her, driving her to the ground as the bolt struck the stone where she had stood. The crowd screamed. Another shot rang out. Marcus rolled, dragging Arinya with him behind a pillar. Guards rushed forward, weapons raised, but the attackers had already struck again, this time from the crowd itself. Hidden figures drew weapons, striking at the royal guard. Chaos erupted. Marcus pulled Arinya close. "Stay down." He barked, then rose, firing the blaster he had taken from a fallen guard. His shots were precise, each one dropping an attacker before they could reach the Queen. Protect the throne. A captain shouted, rallying the soldiers. But the assassins were many, and they were coordinated. This was no simple riot. It was a planned strike, designed to kill the queen and her daughter in front of their people. Marcus fought like a man possessed. He ducked behind pillars, fired at shadows, and dragged Arinya out of danger again and again. At one point, a blade flashed toward her from the side. Without thinking, Marcus threw his arm up, taking the cut across his flesh before slamming his elbow into the attacker's face. Blood ran down his arm, but he didn't stop. Finally, the guards gained control. The assassins who survived fled into the alleys. The crowd was left shaken, their voices a mix of fear and anger. The queen rose tall, her face calm, though her eyes burned with fury. Arinya clung to Marcus's arm, her chest heaving. "You saved me again," she whispered. Her eyes glistened with both fear and something warmer. Something harder for Marcus to name. He only nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. Seems to be a habit. The queen's eyes after the ceremony, Marcus was summoned to the throne room once more. He entered, still bandaged, his arm aching. The queen sat in silence, her nobles gathered around. At first no one spoke. The weight of her gaze was heavy. "You have saved my daughter a second time," Queen Serenia said at last. Her voice was calm, but her tone cut like steel. "Before all the people, before the eyes of this empire, twice you risked your life for her." Marcus bowed slightly. "Anyone would have known," the queen interrupted. Her eyes narrowed. "Not anyone. Only you." Silence filled the hall. Marcus felt the stares of the nobles, their fear, their resentment. The queen rose slowly from her throne, her tall figure casting a long shadow. "You are not like us, human," she said. "You move with a fire that my people do not understand. Perhaps that is why fate brought you here. Perhaps that is why my daughter still breathes." She stepped closer, her voice lower, but no less powerful. "But know this, you are bound now. You cannot walk away. Whether you wish it or not, your actions tie you to this crown." Marcus's jaw tightened. He felt the trap closing. His instincts screamed that this was more than gratitude. It was a claim. The queen's eyes, sharp as blades, did not leave his. And though she said nothing more, Marcus understood the meaning behind her words. He had become more than a guest. He had become part of their destiny. The palace was not the same after the attack on the ceremony. The grand halls that once glowed with music and laughter now felt tense and guarded. The nobles walked with lowered voices, their eyes filled with suspicion. Servants hurried through the corridors. Carrying whispers like hidden daggers, Marcus Hale felt the weight of every stare. Wherever he went, eyes followed him. Some carried gratitude. Others carried hatred. He had stood in front of danger twice now, shielding the princess with his own body. To the common people, he was a hero. But to the powerful nobles, he was something else, an unpredictable stranger, someone who could not be controlled. The queen, however, seemed unchanged. Or perhaps she was simply better at hiding her thoughts. She moved through the palace as if the attacks were nothing but dust blown by the wind. Yet Marcus noticed her gaze linger on him more often. It was not the gaze of a ruler looking at a soldier. It was the gaze of someone weighing a choice, measuring what to do with him. And Marcus knew. The queen was preparing something. The princess in Shadow Serenia stayed near him as often as she could. She no longer looked at him with suspicion. Instead, she watched him with quiet trust. One evening, as they sat in the lantern garden, she finally spoke the words she had been holding back. "You saved me again," she whispered. Her hands twisted together nervously. "In front of everyone, you bled for me twice." Marcus gave a small shrug. "That's what I do. Protect people." Her eyes softened. "But you are not one of us. You don't have to. And yet you do it anyway." He looked away, staring at the glowing pawns. "Doesn't matter if I'm one of you or not. You were in danger?" That was enough. For a long moment, Arinya said nothing. Then, in a quieter voice, she added, "When you were hurt, I was afraid." "Afraid you wouldn't rise again? Afraid you'd vanish like the others?" Marcus turned toward her. "The others?" She nodded slowly. "Before you? Others tried to guard me. Some failed. Some vanished in the dark. My mother says it was fate. But I wonder if it was betrayal. Marcus frowned. He remembered the maps, the missing patrols, the attacker's perfect timing. It wasn't fate, he said firmly. Someone planned it, and they're still here. Irenia's lips pressed into a thin line. Her voice trembled slightly. Then you must be careful. Because now, Marcus, you are more dangerous to them than even my mother. Divided council. The queen called her council 3 days later. The hall was filled with nobles, their silken robes gleaming under the crystal light. Marcus was commanded to attend, standing near the queen's throne. The council began with debate over the assassins. Some called for harsher laws. Others demanded new patrols. But quickly, the whispers turned toward Marcus. Lord Siraz, the tall advisor, stepped forward. This human stands at the center of these storms. Twice now, he has been the only shield between death and the crown. Is it protection? Or is it too convenient? Murmurs filled the chamber. Some nobles nodded. Others frowned. Another voice, Lady Saren, rose to speak. Convenient? No, it is destiny. Twice he has thrown himself before the blade. No Valari has done the same. Perhaps we should learn from him instead of doubting him. More murmurs. The hall was divided. The queen raised her hand, and silence fell instantly. Her gaze swept across the room, cold and sharp. You argue like frightened children. Twice this man has saved my daughter. Twice he has stood where others would not. You may doubt him, but I do not. Her eyes turned toward Marcus. From this day, Marcus Hale will remain in this palace. He will serve as protector to my daughter and guardian of the throne. He will not leave. The words struck like a hammer. The nobles stiffened. Some bowed in agreement. Others clenched their jaws. Marcus himself stood frozen. He had expected something like this, but hearing it aloud was different. The queen had not asked. She had commanded. The weight of command after the council, Marcus followed the queen into her private chamber. The tall doors closed behind them, leaving only silence. You didn't ask me? Marcus said quietly. The queen turned to him, her expression unreadable. No, I did not. Marcus clenched his fists. I'm not your subject. I'm not part of this empire. I should have a choice. You already made your choice, the queen replied, her voice calm but firm. The moment you shielded my daughter with your body, the moment you bled for her, twice, you cannot undo that choice. Not in the eyes of my people. Not in the eyes of fate. Marcus's jaw tightened. So that's it? I'm trapped here forever. The queen stepped closer, her eyes sharp like blades. Trapped. No, chosen. You are here because destiny placed you here. You are what my people cannot be: swift, stubborn, willing to sacrifice. That is why you will stay. She held his gaze, her tone softening slightly. And whether you admit it or not, soldier, you already care for her. That is why you cannot walk away. Marcus's chest tightened. He opened his mouth to protest, but no words came. Because deep inside, he knew the queen was not entirely wrong. A dangerous secret that night, Marcus found himself restless. He walked the quiet halls, his footsteps echoing against marble. His instincts told him danger still lingered. As he turned a corner near the archives, he heard voices. 2 figures stood in the shadows, speaking in hushed tones. Marcus froze, pressing himself against the wall. The queen binds him to her will, one voice said bitterly. If he stays, all our plans crumble. Then he must not stay, the second voice replied. Another strike must be prepared. This time both mother and daughter will fall. Marcus's blood ran cold. He leaned closer, catching a glimpse of their robes. Nobles, high-ranking ones. He could not see their faces, but he knew enough. The betrayal was real, and it was close. Before he could act, the figures slipped away into the dark. Marcus remained still, his heart pounding. The queen had been right, he could not leave. Not now. The palace itself was a battlefield, and the enemy was within the walls. Between duty and Bondin, the days that followed, Marcus stayed even closer to Erignac. She noticed the change in him. "You watch the shadows more now," she said one afternoon, as they trained in the courtyard. She was learning simple defense drills from him. Awkward but determined, Marcus gave a tight smile. "The shadows are where danger hides, and I'd rather see it before it sees you." Arinya tilted her head. "But who do you guard me from, Marcus? From raiders? Or from our own people?" He met her gaze, silent. She saw the answer in his eyes. Arinya lowered her wooden practice blade, her voice trembling. "If it is true, if our own seek my death, then you are the only one I can trust." Marcus felt the weight of her words press against him. He had been a soldier all his life. He had guarded cities, ships, colonies, but never before had he been the only shield for someone's life. And never before had that someone looked at him with such trust. He wanted to tell her he would not fail. He wanted to promise. But soldiers did not promise. They only acted. The Queen's true offer a week later, Marcus was summoned again to the Queen's private chamber. She stood at the window, looking out over the glowing city. "Do you understand now?" she asked without turning. Marcus frowned. "Understand what?" "That you cannot leave," the Queen said. "That fate tied you here, whether you wish it or not." Marcus stepped closer. "You speak of fate. I speak of choice. I stayed because there's danger, because I won't let Arinya die. That's all." The Queen turned then, her eyes shining in the starlight. "No, Marcus, it is more. You are no longer only a protector. You are a symbol. The people saw you shield her with your flesh. They saw you fight where others fell. You are what they whisper about in the markets. The human who bleeds for the crown. Do you see? Your very presence strengthens the throne." Marcus's chest tightened. "You want to use me?" The Queen shook her head. "I want to keep you. As protector, as shield, as proof to all who doubt that this empire still has defenders." She stepped closer, her voice dropping lower, "and perhaps more. For I see how my daughter looks at you, and I see how you cannot turn away from her." Marcus's breath caught. He opened his mouth to protest, but again no words came. The Queen studied him for a long moment. Then she said softly, "Think carefully, human, for soon the choice will not be mine. It will be hers." Marcus stood in silence long after she left the chamber. His heart pounded, his mind torn. He had come here by accident, just another soldier lost in war. Now he stood in the center of a throne's survival, a queen's command, and a princess's trust. And he knew one thing with certainty: the next storm was coming, and this time it would strike from within. The palace slept under a false peace. Lanterns glowed along the terraces, and the city below shimmered with starlight. But Marcus Hale knew the silence was not safety. It was only the pause before the strike. He had heard the traitor's words in the shadows. He had seen the council divided. He had felt the Queen's command press on him like chains. And now he sensed a danger moving closer, waiting to fall. Marcus had been a soldier too long to ignore his instincts. That night, instead of sleeping, he walked the halls in silence. His hand rested on the grip of his blaster. Every guard he passed looked steady, but Marcus saw the truth in their eyes. Some were loyal, some were not. And he knew when the strike came, it would not come from raiders outside. It would come from inside the walls. The princess's promise in the quiet hours before dawn. Arinya found him standing at the balcony, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "You do not rest," she said softly. Marcus turned, surprised to see her in a simple robe, her silver blue hair loose around her shoulders. She looked less like a princess now and more like any young woman who carried heavy thoughts. "Can't rest," Marcus admitted. "Something's coming. I can feel it." Arinya stepped closer. "You have felt it before, haven't you? Before battles, before storms?" He nodded. "Always the same. The air gets heavy. The silence feels too sharp. That's how I know." She looked at him quietly for a long time. Then she said, "Marcus, if danger falls again, I will not hide behind you." He frowned. "What do you mean?" Her voice steadied. "Twice you have shielded me with your body. Twice you have bled in my place. But I am not a child. If I am to be queen one day, I cannot always wait for someone else to stand before me. I must learn to stand myself. His chest tightened. Part of him wanted to argue, to tell her that her safety mattered more than anything. But another part of him respected her words. She was not weak. She was only untested. He gave a slow nod. Then if you stand, I'll stand with you. Side by side, a faint smile touched her lips. Then we will not fall. The betrayal of the strike came sooner than Marcus expected. It began during the High Council meeting, 2 days later. The queen sat on her throne, her robe flowing like liquid gold, her crown gleaming in the crystal light. Nobles filled the chamber, their voices low as new reports of border attacks were read aloud. Marcus stood at his place beside the throne, his eyes scanning the hall. Every movement, every glance, he weighed carefully. Then the doors slammed open. A group of armored guards rushed inside, not the queen's guards, but impostors dressed as them. Their blades were drawn, their faces set with grim resolve, and behind them stepped Lord Cirrus, his once smooth voice now hard as iron. The time of weakness ends tonight, Cirrus shouted. His eyes burned with fury. The queen cannot lead us. The princess cannot save us. The throne is broken, and it must be remade. Gasps filled the chamber. The queen rose slowly, her voice calm. Cirrus, you dare bring treason into my hall. Cirrus sneered. I bring truth. You tie our fate to this outsider, this human, as if he were our savior. But he is nothing but a chain around us. Tonight he dies, and the crown with him. The traitor guards charged. The battle in the throne hall. Marcus moved first. His blaster came up, firing clean shots. The first traitor fell before reaching the steps. The hall erupted into chaos, loyal guards clashing with traitors. Nobles screaming, the air filled with the ring of steel. Stay behind me. Marcus shouted toward the queen and Arinya, but Arinya did not cower. She grabbed her staff from where it rested by the throne. Her hand shook at first, but her eyes were steady. No, Marcus. Side by side. Marcus cursed under his breath, but he stepped with her, meeting the attackers head-on. The fight was brutal. Cirrus's men were skilled, their blades striking fast. Marcus blocked one strike with his arm guard, fired point-blank into another. Pain seared his side as a blade grazed him, but he pushed forward. Arinya swung her staff, striking a soldier across the head. The weapon glowed faintly, surprising even her. Energy sparked from the crystal at its tip, knocking the attacker backward. Marcus gave a quick nod. Good hit. Keep moving. The queen herself did not flee. She stood tall on the steps, her voice commanding the loyal guards. Stand with me. For Valari. For the throne. Her words carried power, and many rallied to her. But Cirrus fought like a storm. He cut through guard after guard, his blade burning with fury, his eyes locked on the queen. Marcus saw him coming. He stepped between them, his blaster raised. The two clashed, Cirrus's blade slamming against Marcus's arm guard. Sparks flying. You don't belong here, human. Cirrus spat. Marcus pushed back with all his strength. Maybe not, but I'm here anyway. The two fought fiercely, their clash echoing through the hall. The turning point at last. Cirrus struck a heavy blow, sending Marcus to one knee. The traitor raised his blade high for the killing strike. But before it could fall, Arinya stepped forward. Her staff glowed brighter than before, light bursting from its crystal. She shouted, her voice breaking with courage. It struck the ground. A wave of energy rippled outward, throwing Cirrus backward across the hall. He crashed into a pillar, his weapon flying from his hand. Silence fell for a heartbeat. Then Marcus rose. His body burning with pain, but his spirit unbroken. He aimed his blaster and fired. Cirrus collapsed, unmoving. The remaining traitors, seeing their leader fall, broke. Some fled. Others dropped their weapons. The loyal guards quickly moved to secure the hall. The battle was over. Aftermath. Marcus stood breathing hard, his body shaking from exhaustion and wounds. Arinya ran to him, her eyes wide with fear. "You're hurt again." He gave a weak smile. "Better me than you." She shook her head fiercely. "No, not just you. Never just you. We fought together. Do you see that now?" Marcus looked at her, at the fire in her eyes, and finally nodded. "Yeah, I see it." The queen descended the steps, her robe trailing behind her. She looked at the broken hall, the fallen traders, and then at Marcus. Her gaze was unreadable, heavy with meaning. "You bled for us again?" she said softly. "Not once. Not twice. But thrice. You shielded not only my daughter, but my throne." Marcus tried to answer, but the queen raised her hand. "No more words. No more doubt. From this day forward, Marcus Hale, you are bound to us. You will not leave this palace. You will not leave my daughter's side. You are hers to guard and mine to keep." Her voice dropped lower, carrying the weight of destiny. "And if fate is true, you are no longer only a protector. You are part of this throne, forever." The final choice later, as the fires of battle cooled and the hall was restored, Marcus stood once more at the balcony. Arenya joined him, her hand brushing lightly against his. "You could still walk away," she whispered. "Even now. You could find another ship, another path." Marcus stared at the stars, silent for a long moment. Then he shook his head. "No, I couldn't, not after this." Arenya's eyes glowed softly. "Then you will stay?" He turned to her, his voice steady. "I'll stay. Side by side." And for the first time since the crash that brought him here, Marcus felt at peace. Not because he had no enemies left, but because he had found something worth standing for, something worth bleeding for, something worth staying for.